I am the Rasta Witch. Here's where we learn the way of the Yan Sui Rasta, which is to say, my kind of Ital. Please subscribe and begin your own kind of Yan Sui witchcraft. All roads lead to Rome. Home. Hello, how you doing? Oh boy. I'm gonna really, like they say, put your thinking cap on, but for me, I gotta put my thinking cap on my lap instead of my thinking hat on my head. And we ready for this? Okay, he's ready. Let's do this. Huh? Oh, no, you can't sit up on my lap. Chill. Okay, so this is part B on Moses in the Bible. So part A, I go over who I think Moses is, and how it can be applied today. You know, like the real information. This one is kind of more about the debate of it all. You know, in scholarship type thing. Okay, so like you know, I'm like my tattoo of the temperance card on my shoulder. You know, I'm a Sagittarius ascendant. You know, so temperance is about marrying things together. You know, and I can even legally marry people together as a legal minister, and that's exactly what I do. So really, this video is about the marriage of Akenhaten and Moses. Okay, so basically, the debate is that it was Sigmund Freud, I pretty much believe, that initially introduced the idea that that Moses and Akenhaten are the same person. So since then, scholars have considered that and studied that quite a bit. Today, most scholars disagree that they're not the same person. But they do agree that Akenhaten was a heretic because he made the religion of the Egypt's monotheistic. There's many quotes from him where he changed it from like making gods plural to singular and things like that, and definitely and made many temples to that God and changed his name and blah blah blah. And there's definitely sufficient evidence that he birthed the concept of monotheism, and everything was pagan before that. And that he changed the religion like that was this new thing. So there are some problematic things with what scholars are saying today. One, like E.A. Wallace Budge teaches in his version of his translation, and half of it is the introduction of look how cool it is. It's a pretty fun read. You know, it's got like the hieroglyphs and the translation under it, and a giant introduction to a subject that's so hard to understand. Of course, E.A. Wallace Budge was the one in charge of the Egyptian Museum in England, which is one of the biggest of the world. That he makes it clear that when you know, like in Akhenaten's ancestry, you know, like his I think it was his great grandpa and his dad, or was it just his dad? Did the same thing, you know, and that's what they do. Like Amun becomes Amun Ra, you know, Ra being the sun god, because the pharaoh represents the sun, and we've all heard this. And if you've ever watched things on Egypt, it's common sense that the pharaoh represents Ra, the sun god. Well, that was a concept that was introduced before Akhenaten. And when they would make these changes, they would have the Egyptian Book of the Dead redone another time, but this time supporting the evidence that they're the sun god, and that it's always been like that, and things like that. And so the idea of a pharaoh being a heretic and changing everything to suit their beliefs actually didn't begin with Akhenaten. And they're the ones that'll teach you that, but they, for some reason, don't draw that conclusion. But they changed it in ways that was still pagan. He changed it in ways that was monotheistic. So, in that sense, they're right, and that is, after all, what they're saying. They just don't quite say it that clearly for some reason. So again, I'm not a scholar. It's kind of like you got your Pistol Petes, the athletes that are natural at things, and ones that work real hard. Like Eddie Van Halen wasn't born a good guitar player. He admits it was all because he practiced endlessly his whole life. I just my ascendant, or I mean, sorry, my moon is in Pisces. Moon Pisces people, we tend to be naturals at these things, and I think I am. So I'm not a scholar, though. I'm very aware of what the scholars say. I read their books, I watch their videos, I've absorbed their message. I'm aware of what they teach and what they say. So, and they also teach me how to think and how to look at the information and how to, so I have this natural tendency, but I also have worked really hard to get where I am. Maybe one day I will go in and be able to call myself a doctor, and then people will be able to listen to me with even more respect. But right now, what I'm asking, especially if you're a scholar, why does that have to mean that I can't, because of some natural talent, have a good point to make, And so I would dare to go in front of scholars and argue these things, and the sneaky thing is if they can prove something wrong, I'm humble. So being humble is a very powerful thing to be. I can change things, I can adapt things, I can learn, and I'm always changing and adapting and learning and improving what I think I know. So if they could prove something wrong, instead of making me look like an idiot, they would just be making me more powerful, by teaching me more information. So anyway, so I've included in this playlist a video of a scholar. I'll make it as the next video after this one, where a scholar proves that Moses and Akenhaten are not the same person. So you can watch that video and see. Okay, so the thing is, I'm not saying, I never said, if you've seen my first video, I never said that Akenhaten and Moses are the same person. See, you have to listen. That's not what I never said that. What I'm saying is that the legend of Akenhaten, and Bible scholars are the ones that taught me this, when a story is told in the Bible, we know that it gets retold and then parts added, and we know the background, and then it gets translated, and all the different things that go into giving us the story that we have today. But the original story was always gathered together by I'm laughing because that's what Coach Sirianni did today with the speech, where he kept his son next to him, and and his son coughs and he's like so anyway, when the person that originally tells a story in the Bible tells a story, like the flood of Noah, was taken from the Epic of Gilgamesh, clearly, they take the story, but then they change it and adapt it to their own needs, and then other writers come in and adapt it even more, and sometimes even another writer comes in and adapts it even more. And I go over that in the first video, Moses in the Bible Part A, and that's what's happened. So then the other problematic thing with what I'm saying is that Abraham, according to the Bible, Abraham was before Akhenaten, and so wasn't Abraham the father of monotheism? And so it's that same thing, I mean, that's what the Bible says, but At this point, there's ample reason to believe that the Bible is not a book of history, nor is it a book of science, that it's a book of myths and legends, all brought together and borrowed from other myths and legends and pasted together in an artistic way. The people that did that, they say they're inspired by God, they always say, but perhaps it's even better said to say that they're artists, and artists have influences. Like, I love, one of my favorite bands is the band Heart, and Heart does lots of Led Zeppelin. If you know Heart, they've been open from day one. That they're diehard Led Zeppelin fans. They do Led Zeppelin covers, and when you know that about them, you can definitely hear the influence Led Zeppelin had on their sound clearly. You know, but and you might say, "What? That sucks. That's true. I don't like Heart anymore. They're just, uh, borrowing from Led Zeppelin. What? They're a bunch of copycats. Can't they come up with their own thing? But the truth is, Led Zeppelin did blues covers. A lot of their ideas, including their song "Gallows Pole," come from Leadbelly. Maybe that's why they came up with the name Led Zeppelin, because they're big Leadbelly fans. They did blues covers, and the Yardbirds and all that stuff. Um, and you just can't do that with art. All artists had their influences, and that's just the way art works. An artist starts out as like Bob says, every great man was once a baby. you know Everybody starts out a baby, and we all grow up, and we all have our influences and our inspirations. you know and in the Bible, the artists that did the Bible, they had their inspiration from previous legends and things like that. So what I'm saying is that Akhenaten, okay, I'm gonna have to set you down for a second, was taken from those legends. Like, the Bible, the scholars that prove Akhenaten and Moses weren't the same person are trying to prove that Akhenaten and Moses weren't the same person, and they're not. Why do they have to be the same person? That's not consistent. That's not what they say in other cases. So you have to be careful. You have to remember, I'm a Rasta. Rastas, we have, it's originally called black supremacy. I showed you the book, if you've watched my roots on early Rastas, the Royal Parchment Scroll of Black Supremacy. Where we have a bias. It's not, if you listen to the scholar, like the scholars that always say, no, those things, they came from Samaria, not Egypt, and they just always, no, it came from Greece, not Egypt, and they never want to give Egypt its due allegiance. You talk to the African scholars or the Rasta scholars, and we have no problem. We're giving Egypt the credit that's due. So anyway, so I've written down the four. So after this, I said there's a Bible scholar proving they're not the same person. So my first evidence that they're wrong is that they're barking up the wrong tree, which is what I just proved. Then listen to the first part, see what I'm saying. And I have my notes here. The four things his whole book, and it's a famous book. If you want to read scholarship on this, his book is a famous book on that. His first point, he says, Akhenaten didn't do an exodus. Again, it's the legend. When the writers take from a legend, they just get basic concepts. So Akhenaten was a legend, and he changed something. He did the impossible. He rewrote the concepts and reorganized the Egyptian concepts in a big way. That's why he would have been considered he was a heretic, but he was in charge, so he was allowed to do that. And the problem is that it didn't last. After he died, pretty much it just phased back out, and it went right back to where it started from. And it didn't work. So they're saying that that's a strong evidence. Oops, that was point 3. But so he didn't do an exodus. But the thing is that, so one of the similarities that Akhenaten has with Moses, and I have another video that you just watched before this, that Akhenaten, two big similarities was that he wasn't supposed to be the Pharaoh. and he was like hidden away, like how Moses was hidden away. He threatened that, and then so that they put him in the basket, and then the lady from the Pharaoh's family took him out, and that's why his name's Moses, because he's out of the water and all that. Moses is actually an Egyptian name that has other meanings too, but the Bible ascribes a new meaning, that it means out of the water, which I don't know why nobody talks about that. That's a contradiction, isn't it? But she raised him as an Egyptian magician, and then he led the people in an exodus. But the thing is Akhenaten did the same general thing. He was supposed to be the pharaoh, and then he ended up the pharaoh. But at one point, he did have to lead an army to fight Ramesses, and he did. So it mentions that in a previous video, that he did lead an army. So it's instead of leading a group of people across the Red Sea, he led an army to Egypt instead of away from Egypt. And he was born and hidden away, and then became the Pharaoh. See, so there are differences, but but that's okay. I mean, no, when someone takes from a legend, they never make it exactly the same way. And another one was, he says, Moses was in Goshen, which is like to the northeast, and then he wakes up one day and is in the Pharaoh's court before the Pharaoh, with all the serpent, the staff turns into a serpent, and all the things he does before the Pharaoh to battle his magicians. How did he, that's like a 3-day journey. How did he go from Goshen to the Pharaoh's court, to do that? And of course, that's why the Bible is not a book of history. There's literally hundreds of contradictions and errors in the Bible. That's why it's ridiculous to think by now no one should believe the Bible is the Word of God, nor that it's a book of science, nor that it's a book of history. That's another strong evidence just with the book of Genesis, which is a book of Moses. You can see people's biases, and you can see my video. I have a video where I confess my biases, so you can see, so you can take me with a grain of salt too. But they just won't quit. They won't stop saying that everything comes from Samaria, even though the first writing comes from Samaria. Therefore, that's where the legends all start. But meanwhile, the legends already existed in Egypt. They just didn't write them down yet, and then they started writing them down just after. So the idea of writing them down, they probably copied from Samaria, you might say, though. I don't know if there's proof of that, but they wrote them down right after that. But the legends that they wrote down, there's a proof that they existed before that. So it's like, come on, you guys. And same with the Garden of Eden. It says that the Garden of Eden was in Ethiopia, but they still want to make believe it was in Iraq, and Iran, and the Tigris and Euphrates River and all that stuff, Even though science makes it clear it didn't. It was in Ethiopia. It was in the Horn of Africa, and that's what it says. Why can't you just notice that it says it was in Ethiopia? And like people, they didn't know how big the world was back in time, So the Nile River must have been called the Tigris and Euphrates River, where it turns into the Blue Nile and does have a fork. And there's a whole history. I've seen documentaries on it with who controls the water, and the water had everything to do with everything. And it's you can believe those things too, So then, so the theophany of Akenhaten died out, but the problem is that it's just like I said, an artist takes from previous things. So like when Heart did Led Zeppelin already had their heyday. They already had their day of fame, which extended beyond that. But now it was Heart's turn. Like when you take, just because the artist that you were inspired by is no longer a big thing, that's just all the more reason that really it's an evidence that Moses is Akenhaten, that his theogony ended after that, because it would have ended, and imagine you're like, oh wow, Akenhaten started this whole thing, and and then it just died out and nobody did anything with it. They didn't take the ball and run with it. Why don't we bring those concepts into this man Moses that and you can watch documentaries on why Moses probably wasn't actually a person, or that he was a person, like I say in my the part A of this, that he was a person, but it's been embellished. He led a smaller group of people, and his name probably was Moses. And then they brought in all these concepts from Akhenaten to embellish Moses and bring him up to be this thing, so he can be powerful. And Jethro taught him even more stuff, and and so he would have been built up and brought up, and he was made into the person we call Moses, both in his lifetime and after, borrowing from the concepts of Akhenaten. So then, what about Abraham? Abraham's from the book of Moses, from the book of Ephraim, which is a book of Moses. And so, and Moses didn't write it, but Akhenaten came before Moses, like 100 years before, and so that they're saying that they didn't. How could they be the same person with that 100-year gap? But see how you would do that if to make Moses to continue on these concepts. You might embellish Abraham, which might have also been a person, but then you embellish that to make him look like he's the person that starts the monotheism, not Moses, so that it's kind of like a white lie, So, anyway, so what I've done is I have the video that believes Moses and Akhenaten borrow or like what I'm saying, that agrees with me. And in that video at the end, there's a bunch of book references they're giving. And I have the one after this, which is a scholar that disagrees with me. And he has his book and gives other book references. So I'm not make-believing anything. I'm presenting all the information. I have my video that I've told you can look up to see my biases. You can take me with a grain of salt. You can listen to all sides of the argument and see what you think. But I hope that you can consider my talent in the whole mumbo jumbo. My talent is that I'm really gifted at marrying things together. Okay, and so if what we're trying to do, I'm a Sagittarius. Temperance is my corresponding card. What I do is I marry things together, and that's exactly. I'll teach you how to love any culture. I'll teach you how not to be racist, not to be threatened by other groups, other religions, other people. Everything about me and my teachings and my nature and my acts and everything about me is marriage, and I'm not even married. Nor do I believe marriage is something everybody should do, like what we call marriage. But marriage can also mean marrying concepts and marrying things together, and that's exactly what I do.